The Village Theatre by Nathaniel Hawthorne. About the 1st of September, my fellow traveller and myself arrived at a country town where a small company of actors on their return from a summer's campaign in the British provinces were giving a series of dramatic exhibitions. A moderately sized hall of the tavern had been converted into a theatre. The performances that evening were the heir at law, and no song, no supper, with the recitation of Alexander's feast between the play and farce. The house was thin and dull, but the next day there appeared to be brighter prospects, the playbills announcing at every corner on the town pump and awful sacrilegion, the very door of the meeting house, an unprecedented attraction after setting forth the ordinary entertainments of a theatre. The public were informed in the hugest type that the printing office could supply, that the manager had been fortunate enough to accomplish an engagement with the celebrated storyteller. He would make his first appearance that evening and recite his famous tale of Mr. Higginbotham's catastrophe, which had been received with rapturous applause by audiences in all the principal cities. This outrageous flourish of trumpets, be it known, was wholly unauthorized by me, who had merely made an engagement for a single evening, without assuming any more celebrity than the little I possessed. As for the tale, it could hardly have been applauded by rapturous audiences, being as yet an unfilled plot, nor even when I stepped upon the stage was it decided whether Mr. Higginbotham should live or die. In 2 or 3 places underneath the flaming bills which announced the storyteller was pasted a small slip of paper giving notice in tremulous characters of a religious meeting to be held at the schoolhouse, where with divine permission Eliakim Abbot would address sinners on the welfare of their immortal souls. In the evening, after the commencement of the tragedy of Douglas, I took a ramble through the town to quicken my ideas by active motion. My spirits were good, with a certain glow of mind, which I had already learned to depend upon as the sure prognostic of success. Passing a small and solitary schoolhouse where a light was burning dimly and a few people were entering the door, I went in with them and saw my friend Eliakim at the desk. He had collected about 15 hearers, mostly females. Just as I entered, he was beginning to pray in accents so low and interrupted that he seemed to doubt the reception of his efforts, both with God and man. There was room for distrust in regard to the latter. At the conclusion of the prayer, several of the little audience went out, leaving him to begin his discourse. Under such discouraging circumstances, added to his natural and agonizing diffidence, knowing that my presence on these occasions increased his embarrassment, I had stationed myself in a dusky place near the door, and now stole softly out. On my return to the tavern, the tragedy was already concluded, and being a feeble one in itself, and indifferently performed, it left so much the better chance for the storyteller. The bar was thronged with customers, the toddistick keeping a continual tattoo, while in the hall there was a broad, deep buzzing sound, with an occasional peal of impatient thunderroll, symptoms of all overflowing house, and an eager audience. I drank a glass of Winningwater, and stood at the side scene, conversing with a young person of doubtful sex. If a gentleman, how could he have performed the singing girl the night before in No Song, No Supper? Or, if a lady, why did she enact young Norval, and now wear a green coat and white pantaloons in the character of Little Pickle? In either case, the dress was pretty, and the wearer bewitching, so that at the proper moment I stepped forward with a gay heart and a hold one, while the orchestra played a tune that had resounded at many a country ball, and the curtain as it rose discovered something like a country barroom. Such a scene was well enough adapted to such a tale. The orchestra of our little theatre consisted of 2 fiddles and a clarinet, but if the whole harmony of the Tremont had been there, it might have swelled in vain beneath the tumult of applause that greeted me. The good people of the town, knowing that the world contained innumerable persons of celebrity undreamed of by them, took it for granted that I was one, and that their roar of welcome was but a feeble echo of those which had thundered around me in lofty theatres. Such an enthusiastic uproar was never heard. Each person seemed a Briarchus, clapping 100 hands besides keeping his feet, and several cudgels in play, with stamping and thumping on the floor, while the ladies flourished their white cambric handkerchiefs, intermixed with yellow and red bandana, like the flags of different nations. After such a salutation, the celebrated storyteller felt almost ashamed to produce so humble an affair as Mr. Higginbotham's catastrophe. This story was originally more dramatic than as they're presented and afforded good scope for mimicry and buffoonery, neither of which, to my shame, did I spare. I never knew the magic of a name till I used that of Mr. Higginbotham. Often, as I repeated it, there were louder bursts of merriment than those which responded to what, in my opinion, were more legitimate strokes of humor. The success of the piece was incalculably heightened by a stiff queue of horsehair, which little Pickle, in the spirit of that mischief-loving character, had fastened to my collar, where, unknown to me, it kept making the queerest gestures of its own, in correspondence with all mine, the audience supposing that some enormous joke was appended to this long tail behind, were ineffably delighted, and gave way to such a tumult of approbation that just as the story closed the benches broke beneath them, and left one whole row of my admirers on the floor. Even in that predicament they continued their applause. In after times, when I had grown a bitter moralizer, I took this scene for an example: how much of fame is humbug, how much the meed of what our better nature blushes, at how much an accident, how much bestowed on mistaken principles, and how small and poor the remnant from pit and boxes. There was now a universal call for the storyteller. That celebrated personage came not when they did call to him. As I left the stage, the landlord, being also the postmaster, had given me a letter with the postmark of my native village, and directed to my assumed name in the stiff old handwriting of Parson Thumbcushion. Doubtless, he had heard of the rising renown of the storyteller, and conjectured at once that such a nondescript luminary could be no other than his lost ward. His epistle, though I never read it, affected me most painfully. I seemed to see the puritanic figure of my guardian standing among the fripperies of the theatre, and pointing to the players, fantastic and effeminate men, the painted women, the giddy girl in boys' clothes merrier than modest, pointing to these with solemn ridicule, and eyeing me with stern rebuke. His image was a type of the austere duty, and they of the vanities of life. I hastened with the letter to my chamber, and held it unopened in my hand, while the applause of my buffoonery yet sounded through the theatre. Another train of thought came over me. The stern old man appeared again, but now with the gentleness of sorrow, softening his authority with love, as a father might, and even bending his venerable head, as if to say that my errors had an apology in his own mistaken discipline. I strode twice across the chamber, then held the letter in the flame of the candle, and beheld it consume unread. It is fixed in my mind, and was so at the time, that he had addressed me in a style of paternal wisdom and love and reconciliation, which I could not have resisted had I but risked the trial. The thought still haunts me that then I made my irrevocable choice between good and evil fate. Meanwhile, as this occurrence had disturbed my mind and indisposed me to the present exercise of my profession, I left the town in spite of a laudatory critique in the newspaper, and untempted by the liberal offers of the manager. As we walked onward, following the same road on two such different errands, Eliakim groaned in spirit and labored with tears to convince me of the guilt and madness of my life.